Okie dokie, welcome aboard. You're now attending the University of Plymouth January 2025 pre-departure webinar. We are giving this live today on the 12th of December, 12/12, but we are also recording this, so maybe you're watching this not live. Well, welcome wherever and whenever you're joining this session. My name is Daniel. I'm the one on the left of this slide, the guy in the tie. Although I'm not wearing a tie today, I'm wearing my University of Plymouth t-shirt. Ting. Anyway, I work in the international office here, and I may have met some of you in my travels. I may not, but I will meet you, of course, when you get here in January. And I'm joined in this presentation today by my fantastic colleague, Nina, who's Student Immigration Advice Manager here at the University of Plymouth. Nina, want to say hi?
Hi, everybody. I look forward to speaking to you in the next few slides about all things immigration.
Thanks, Nina. So yes, we're going to talk to you today for, I'm going to say approximately 40 or so minutes, but we're going to keep everything comfortably inside the hour that we would have started on at past, although a few minutes late to allow you to join. It's a Q&A open session as well, and that's going to happen during the presentation. So whatever questions you've got, even questions you've got right now, you can please put them into the Q&A button that you will see on your presentation. So just put your questions in. We have a bunch of colleagues, a panel full of colleagues available and on this session with us. So although only myself and Nina are presenting, our colleagues are online, ready to answer questions via the Q&A button live throughout the presentation. So get those questions in. That's how we're going to do it. So don't need to raise hand or anything like that. Just type your questions in the Q&A button, and that's where we'll do it. That will allow for a better flow and get us through the information more efficiently. And then, of course, the recording will be made available to you, rewatch later if you like. Okay. Without much more ado, we're going to let you know what it is we're doing today. So we're going to talk about your offers, which you may already have. In fact, many of you will already have your offers. Then we'll get to think about, all right, pre-departure stuff, all right, what to do before you travel and the preparation for the actual travel itself. And then we'll imagine that you've had a very comfortable flight or however you get to the UK and to Plymouth. Particularly when you arrive in the UK, we'll focus in on how to get to Plymouth from wherever you may arrive. And then we'll focus in a little bit on your first days in Plymouth. Okay, so a lot of information is going to come at you. Warning, there are a few QR codes that are going to pop up. So either get ready to print the screen, grab the screen, or have your phone or something handy to kind of live grab those QR codes, because they're the fastest way to get to the content, further information that we wish to throw your way. Right, let's get started. All right then, so offers. You probably have applied to us already, that's why you're attending this session. And assuming you have, many of you will have already received your offer. Now, if you have not received an offer yet, then reach out to us offline. If you're not sure how to do that, our contact details are here. Just put the one on the left, the one under my name. If you've not had an offer yet, just email us and we'll double check that, okay? But assuming most of you will, then what will those offers look like? Well, they'll either be a conditional offer or an unconditional offer. That's all they can really be. What is the difference? Well, not much. There's just one extra thing to do if you're on the left-hand side of this, and many of you will be, I'm sure. So a conditional offer means that we have accepted you to join us in January here at the University of Plymouth in Britain's Ocean City. But there may be some conditions attached to that acceptance offer, such as any documents that we are missing, any qualifications you've yet to submit to us. So a conditional offer is really, the first thing you need to do, of course, is to consider what you wish to do with that offer. And point one here is that if you're assuming that you're coming to Plymouth to join us, firm accept that offer. And the offer letter tells you how to do that. Just let us know that you intend to join us. Then, of course, you need to meet whatever conditions are on the offer letter. And it could be obtain transcripts or certificates or get your IELTS or other English test results, or indeed whatever is detailed in your offer letter. Now, you must do that before you can do the next stages. Because once you have met all of those conditions, then And only then you will be invited to pay your deposit and complete the pre-CAS checklist. Daniel, what is a pre-CAS checklist? Well, actually, Daniel, what is a CAS? Okay, Daniel, talking to myself, I do that a lot. A CAS is a confirmation of acceptance for study, confirmation acceptance studies. Well, the technical term, Daniel, is electronic visa letter thing. So, your electronic visa letter thing is your CAS. Now, before we can issue that CAS, you need to have completed the pre-CAS checklist and sent it to us so that we know exactly which details are going on the CAS. So only once you've met academic conditions can you go towards that visa status. And I know a lot of students are asking, when can I get my CAS, or when will my CAS be issued because I need to apply for my visa? Well, we can get to that stage once all academic conditions are met, because at that point we invite you to pay your deposit, right? And do the pre-CAS checklist. Once all that's done, then we issue your electronic visa letter thing, your CAS, and you apply for the visa. And then and only then should you be booking your flight. So let's look at very briefly the unconditional offer. Well, that's basically the same as I've just said, except of course that you've already met all the academic conditions. There's nothing on that letter that you still need to submit to us. That means that you will do the firm acceptor offer, pay your deposit, and complete the precast checklist. That's basically the same. Now then, what to do before traveling, applying for your visa? I think this is where I tag team Nina to talk next.
Thanks, Dan. Okay, so assuming that you're all applying for a student visa to come to the UK, you may need some advice with the application process. So the University of Plymouth is unable to give specific individual advice to all of you, mainly for practical reasons. But most of you have come through an agent, so please contact your agent where they will be able to give you some guidance and advice on the visa process. If you don't have an agent, you can look at this link here, and you can tag along to an agent if you do want to access that advice, or use your own independent visa advisor. The process application is actually very simple now. It's an online application and it's a very logical process. But tomorrow we will be running this session, especially to go into the details of how to apply for the student visa from outside of the UK. So that QR code there, as Dan said, take your phone out, take a snap of that. These slides will be emailed to you after this event has finished today, so you can access these links as well via the link to the slides. So it's tomorrow at 11 o'clock. So within these slides, I'm just going to touch very briefly on some of the visa issues, but please come along tomorrow, 11 till 12. We'll be running through from start to finish all you need to know about applying for this student visa. Okay, so just briefly, as Dan has already said, you can apply for the student visa once you've met all the conditions of your offer and you've been sent your CAS. Sorry, there's a bit of repetition there. So you can then complete the application once you've got your CAS reference number. If you don't have the CAS reference number, you cannot apply for the student visa. So that's why most students are really eager to get the magic CAS. So once you have the CAS, before you apply for the student visa, you must make sure you are prepared with the documents. So the most important one is that you must have the correct financial evidence, which is living costs and tuition fees. So a slide in a moment, I'll go into that in a bit more detail. The education documents you use to get your offer. So you may have provided us with all the education documents to get the offer for the university, but this is now to get the visa. So you have to show the same documents. There's a different processes as the UKVI assessing your visa, no longer the University of Plymouth. So you need to get those documents out again. Evidence of any gaps in study we'll discuss in a moment. And you must have the money in your bank account to pay for the actual application fees. Obviously, you need to have money to show living costs and tuition fees. So that's that money in the bank account just to see. But the actual expense, the cost you have to pay out straight away will be the application healthcare fee. ATAS certificate. The ATAS certificate is only applicable to some postgraduate research students who might be studying a more sensitive subject. For example, bioengineering, chemistry, genetics it's an ATAS is a scheme run by the Home Office where they just need an extra level of vetting and to be done first. On your CAS, if you look at it carefully, it will mention ATAS and have a Y or no next to it, whether yes, you need an ATAS or no, you don't. If you do, you can apply for one online and it takes about 30 days to get the ATAS. So if you do need one, make sure you apply as soon as possible because you have to have the ATAS number, certificate, which has the number, before you apply for a student visa. So do not delay with that ATAS. TB certificate, if applicable. So that's tuberculosis. I can't even say it this morning. Tuberculosis certificate. So again, you can just type in, do I need a TB certificate in Google for the UK? And it will just show you if you do or do not need one from your particular country. Okay, so let's talk a bit more about the living costs and tuition fees for your visa. Okay, so it's quite a bit on this screen. So the audience today, your postgraduate students. So the fees, so looking at your tuition fees, they can vary. So you need to check your own individual offer, depending on what course you're studying, look at the fees. So in yellow here is where we calculate your living costs which are needed to apply for the student visa. Now, if you apply for your student visa before the 2nd of January, then the figure you need for living costs is 9207. A nice round figure. We do have asked the Home Office how do they get to that odd figure, but we've never got a clear answer from them. But 9207 is the amount you need for living costs. Now, these living costs will be increasing from the 2nd of January onwards. So if you don't submit your visa application until 2nd of Jan onwards, then there is a bit of an increase on how much you need to show. So as you can see, that's 10224. Now, also I've put in there that living costs may be higher. So these are living costs that you need just to get your visa granted. It might be when you arrive in Plymouth that your living costs are actually higher than that if you decide to live in some sort of swish penthouse apartment somewhere, or they might even be lower than that if you accept a more basic lifestyle. So don't rely on this figure as the actual amount you need to live comfortably in the UK. So an example here, let's assume you've all paid the £3,500 deposit. So if you're applying from the 2nd of January onwards, so let's look at the worst scenario that the living costs are slightly higher. Your tuition fees, maybe in this example, are 18,000. You've paid your 3,500 deposit. You have 14,500 left to pay in tuition fees. If you then add on the living costs of 10,224, 24,724 is needed in your bank account for 28 days to apply for your student visa. So again, make sure you check your CAS for the exact fees because this is just an example, but also note tuition fees may increase each year. Now, if you're a master's student for 1 year, that's fine. These are the fees. But if you had to repeat the year for any reason, then that original figure tuition fee might have increased for next year. So just bear that in mind. But hopefully you will pass within that after the first year anyway. So let's look a little bit more into financial evidence. So the money needs to be an accessible personal bank account. So it can't be in stocks and shares or some time deposit that's tied up. It's got to be accessible and it must be in there for continuous 28 days prior to visa submission. So say you had, I don't know, £25,000 you needed. If that money has gone down, even by just 1 day within that 28-day period, your visa will be refused. So it's really important you calculate what you need yourself and make sure it's in the bank account or, in the account for the correct amount of time. If you're lucky enough to be financially sponsored, then you will need to get an official letter for this. If also, I haven't put this in there, but if you're relying on an educational loan, again, you'll need an official letter. When you come to the visa session tomorrow, hopefully you can come along. We'll go into a lot more detail about these areas. So this is just some brief information now. Allow for fluctuations in currency. We've had some visas refused in the past where students got exactly what they need, submitted the visa, but unbeknown to them, the actual true value of their currency fluctuated and went down. It reduced on the day of a submission. So no fault of their own, their visa was refused. So please make sure you have a buffer. Now, some countries, their fluctuations in currency value is a lot more volatile than others. So it's up to you. You know your own country, whether you have like a 500 buffer or a couple of £1,000 buffer. We would always say a couple of £1,000 buffer. If you have the money available, be prepared for any falls in the rates. If you're using parent or guardian's bank statements, this is permissible, but there are more documents will be needed, such as a birth certificate or proof to show that you are legally related, and a consent letter from them saying, yes, we allow them to use all our money in our account for education purposes. Again, we'll go into that more detail tomorrow. Applications from outside of the UK, currently the price is £490 per applicant. That's for a standard visa application. It takes about 8 weeks to get, sorry, not 8 weeks. It can take up to about 3 weeks to get your visa granted from overseas. If for some reason you're getting quite close to the time of your latest enrolment date in January, then you might want to look at applying for a priority visa, which is an extra £500 on top. So that will make the cost around £1,000 per applicant. So if you are getting close and for some reason something's happened and you can't apply for your visa in time, please make contact with us just to make sure you can get to the UK in time. Some countries or visa application centres don't offer a priority service. So, just make contact with us so we can have a one-to-one conversation with you. Other fee to pay is the immigration health surcharge. So that's the amount you pay to have full access to the NHS, the National Health Service here. So during your time that you're studying in the UK, you can access the first, most of the NHS services. So if you break a leg, for example, you'll get covered. You can get go to the doctor to receive advice. You still need to pay for things such as dental care, eye care, and anything to do with hearing. So it doesn't cover for everything, but that's the same with us. We have to pay for anything really to do with eyesight, hearing, and teeth. So you have to pay this as part of the visa application fees. So you need to have your bank card ready to pay both these fees. Now, 776, if you're actually a one-year master's student, you will get a wrap-up period at the end of about 4 months. So the Home Office give you an extra 4 months on the end, which is lovely because you have 4 months to plan your next steps. But that does trigger an extra bit of IHS fee. So it will be added on another £388 there. But that QR code, you can go in and actually type in your details and it'll tell you exactly how much you will need to pay. Okay, tips for your current student visa. I'm assuming your passport is valid, considering you might be traveling to us pretty soon, but it's quite interesting how many of us might forget to check our passport before we travel anywhere. So please get your passport out now and check. And if it's due to expire before you travel, then you need to get that sorted. Gaps in study. So the Home Office, the UKVI caseworker, will be really concentrating on any gaps between you finishing high school and starting this degree. They'll be looking to see if you are really a genuine student. Why has there been a 3-year gap? Now, we've seen quite a few refusals over this past year where the caseworker has not been happy with the gap, or they either refuse your visa outright or they will ask you for extra evidence as to why there is a gap. What we suggest to you, if you are one of those students with applicants with a big gap, then write a letter to submit at the same time as your visa application. So you can just say, there's a 3-year gap, there's a 5-year gap because I started my career in this subject. I've now decided, for example, I want to go down a different route. So I wish to get back into education to do that. Or maybe you had a gap because of raising a family or whatever reason you have for the gap, that reason. So just put it in a letter, write it yourself, and just upload it with your visa documents. And that will really help the caseworker if they suddenly see a gap. They'll go, this student's given me an explanation. And that will just reduce the risk of a refusal or a delay in your visa. We've already said about having more money in your bank account for fluctuations. Another thing to be aware of with bank accounts is the UKVI caseworker, if they see a large lump sum deposited in your account, they will think, where has this come from? So if your bank account starts off with a very small amount, 00, or just a small amount, and then suddenly you have the equivalent of £25,000 or so going back in there, the caseworker will think, where has that come from? Now, again, you can preempt that with a cover letter to say that something like this money has come from my family, they've saved for me specifically in readiness for me to study this degree. So this is where this lump sum has come from. But then you will need to show a bank statement to show the money has been debited from their account and put in yours. So it all gets a bit complicated. Or easier is just to print off your bank statement with an opening balance of the full amount. So when all the money is in there, print the bank statement from that date onwards for 28 days, and then there's no question about where these massive lump sums have come from. Okay, so that's a tip for you. Make sure documents are clear. That's obvious, really. And you need to apply from the country you normally reside in. Credibility interviews. So the University of Plymouth itself, we have our own credibility team. So they may contact you to do a credibility interview with you. They might have done it already, or they might be due to do one with you. So they will be actually looking at some of your details. And in a way, it's a good thing because it sort of preps you if you're then called for a credibility interview by the UKVI caseworker. Now, we are not allowed to train you on how to answer these questions. But again, if you look on our webpage here, we have a list of example questions. And some of them are really, really basic. Some of them, they might just say, how long do you think it will travel from your accommodation to the university campus? Which is really sort of very specific questions, which you wouldn't necessarily know, but if you can do some homework beforehand, prepare yourself, then you'll be able to answer these questions, these odd questions, a lot easier. So have a look at that webpage while you can. Bring dependents with you. This is quite a common question at the moment. The rules change from January 2024. So you can only bring dependents if you're studying a PhD or a research-based higher degree. So if you're studying a master's degree now, you can't bring dependents unless the second bullet point there, you are fully financially sponsored by a government, and your courses full-time last 6 months. So unless you're fully financially sponsored, you are not to be able to bring students to the UK. And there's another bullet point there for those, there's not many of you, but if you are already in the UK and your most recent permission was a student visa, there's another way you can bring, you can invite students over as well. But most of the time, you would not be able to bring dependents. If you've got a question on that, you can email us separately and we can answer you. But it's pretty clear. It's very restrictive now for bringing dependents to the UK. And you can see at the bottom here, if you are permitted to bring dependents, please check out the accommodation in Plymouth before you arrive, just to make sure that it's available for you. Okay. So preparing to travel. So actually, I think this might be Dan's slide. I'm not sure, actually. It might be me. Sorry. So before leaving to come to the UK, have a look at this QR code. It will give you a list of essential documents. So again, have a look at that in your own time. Next slide. Okay, the right to study. So when you arrive in the UK, so you've got your student visa. When you arrive in the UK, when you arrive at Plymouth, we don't know what immigration document you have, what immigration status. So, and we are only allowed to let you start your course once we have checked that you have the right immigration to study. So we ask you to do a right to study check. Now you will be emailed an individual link to your personalized link to your email address a few weeks before you arrive in the UK. Don't bother doing it whilst you're outside because it won't work. Once you're in the UK, even if when you arrive at the airport in the UK, that's fine, but you've got to be in the UK and just go onto that link. Normally, the email would come from a person called Adam Smith, or it might come from UKVI reporting. It'll be University of Plymouth email. Go onto the link, and what we're doing is asking you to upload your, say, for example, a copy of your visa page, the stamp on your visa page when you came through the border, um, your share code, because most of you will have an e-visa, the new style e-visa, so we'll need to have a share code as well. Obviously, if you're from the EU, you might not get a stamp on your passport, and that's absolutely fine. We might just ask for like a travel document instead. So the main thing is you need to get that right to study done as soon as you can, because you won't be able to enroll on your course or check your timetable, do anything until that right to study check has been completed. Once you've completed the link, it takes a couple of days for the compliance team to check your status is good, and they will then email to you to say all is good, now you can enroll. Okay, so don't delay with that. Now it's down.
Thank you, Nina. Yes, it is now me. I hope you've been grabbing lots of QR codes to fill your phone with those to look at later and filling lots of information, useful information into your brains as well. Don't forget, we're going to send copies of these slides afterwards and indeed a recording of this presentation so you can do it all again. I know you want to. Okay, we're going to look into now the bit that we've actually expecting on pre-departure is what happens about getting ready to fly and what happens when you get here. So let's look into all this stuff. Okay, don't forget, keep those Q&A questions coming as well. My colleagues are here. Their fingers are itching to type answers to you. So we're doing it that way today to keep your questions within the presentation. It'll just be a bit smoother and faster. So keep those questions coming. Right. Booking flights. Let's do about that. So just a quick reminder, you only should be booking your flight once you receive your passport and visa back from the visa office, okay? And that's when you should be booking your flights, not before. Otherwise, you might book flights for dates that you can't fly because you haven't got your passport back yet. Now, we usually say preferably directly to London Heathrow. More about that later. But you should also book your flight to make sure it takes place within the dates, the permitted dates on your temporary travel vignette. I never knew that word vignette. I never knew what a vignette was. Apparently, a vignette is a sticker. So let's go with sticker. So book your flight when the visa sticker in your passport tells you you can fly. Because again, if you do it outside of that, that's not valid. So just a reminder, don't book your travel until you know that your visa is granted. Maybe you can hold flights, but don't book them until you know for sure. Okay, so related to that, some other key dates to burn into your brains. Monday, the 13th of January, the induction week starts. So that's a very good time to arrive. Friday, the 17th of January, is the International Student Welcome Day. That's a super important day to make sure you're here for because lots of useful things will be happening just for you. Monday, the 20th of January, that's when teaching commences for most programs, but maybe not all. And then fast forward all the way to March, Wednesday, the 12th of March. That's what we call our settling in event. What is that? Well, that is a day for you to catch up anything, any stuff that maybe you missed during that induction week. Either if you arrived a little bit late and you missed something on one day, or you were just too tired or busy doing something else. Maybe there's just a gap or two in your settling in experience. Well, that's why we have a catch-up day. And we have it a bit later, such as March, to give you plenty of time to make sure that you can catch those things up. But don't forget, you can always go into our student hub, which is in our library, if there's other questions that you need to fill. You don't have to wait till March, okay? Please remember that some programs might have different course start dates or indeed program induction days as well. Okay, so look into that. Your offer letter will confirm exactly what you need to do. I like this title, this slide, prepare. Yeah, that's the general plan. Prepare for what? Well, prepare for accommodation. If you haven't already started to do that, it's really important to get on with that. So let's talk about that now. So finding accommodation in Plymouth is going to be private options because our on-campus accommodation is reserved for our undergraduate students because they're younger, they're less mature, they need more support. As a result, the postgraduate students will stay what we say off-campus. But actually, in a city the scale of Plymouth, off-campus will actually be really very convenient still. So there are lots of private options. Usually, our postgraduate students will find rooms in a shared student house, and the contracts for that are often a year. They might be for 6 months. There's not that much flexibility with most landlords, and actually, student lets are quite in demand. So it's really important that you start your search early and find what's right for you. The earlier you start, usually the more options there still are. It's important to remember that, of course, signing a contract, as in life and commonly, if you're signing a contract, you're committed to it. So if you're signing a contract, you're liable to pay for the remainder of the time of that contract. So make sure the duration of the contract suits you. Now, the University of Plymouth Students' Union, otherwise short known as UPSU, so the Student Union, UPSU, has an advice centre, and that provides free tenancy agreement checking, so contract checking. And so you could use this, and perhaps you should use this before you sign any agreement. And there's a link there. It's not on QR code. I don't think we could fit a QR on here, but don't worry, it's very easy. Just go to upsu.com and you can find that very, very easily, or just screen grab this. It's important that you know that unless a contract specifically states, then it is a strictly one person per room contract. It's very common for students to only be in a room by themselves. It's really rare for room sharing. And if the contract does not say that you can room share, then you're not legally allowed to room share. So that means you would not be having two of you per room. If you have any questions or need further signposting or advice, then contact Uni Accommodation at plymouth.ac.uk. Bit more about accommodation, and there are lots of agencies, accommodation agents in Plymouth, of course, and they specialize in accommodation, of course. The campus being so central in Plymouth, most properties, as I mentioned previously, are quite close. And here it says within 20 minutes walk of the university. That's true, depending on your walking speed. I can do it in 10. But actually, it's also a lot of accommodation is well within that. So usually, again, the closest accommodation will fill up first, and then a bit further away might be available a bit later, but maybe a bit cheaper. So you can think about that as you plan. And don't forget, go to Google Maps and time how long Google Maps tells you it is from campus, and use walking time because you're not going to take cars or helicopters. You're just going to walk. A guideline of rent here, of course, it really depends on the type of accommodation you're getting, but a rent in a private accommodation is around 120 to 130 GBP, pounds per week. And then it's a good idea to check any reviews or recommendations about any given accommodation. Look around. I'm sure you're better at that than I am to find out what the reviews are. Bear in mind that when you're looking at the amount of rent you pay, you might need to know what's included. Sometimes the bills, gas, electricity, water, may be included. Sometimes they're not included, or they're included up to a cap, a limit. And if they're not included, they will be metered. So you have to share amongst your housemates those bills. So you just need to check what's included and figure that out. The preferred easiest method for international students related to payment is actually to pay the full year or the full amount of your tenancy in advance. Because if not, then you will need a guarantor. Now, if you use a guarantor who you know, like a UK or EU homeowner who can demonstrate their income as per this slide, then fine. But if not, then you use the guarantor scheme, which is called your guarantor. Now, again, there's quite a long link here, but if you get the copies of these slides later, you can copy it or just screen grab this and you can get it, or just go to the university's website, go to the accommodation page, and actually you can find the guarantor scheme very easily. So it's there if you need that. Right, well, once you've got the suitable property, you may need to pay an advance rent to secure that booking whilst sorting out that paperwork, and that might be non-refundable. So again, check with the agency or the landlord about what your costs are so that you know upfront and that you're ready to do that. It's a good advice to make sure that you've got accommodation immediately when you land in the UK so that you're not stuck for something. Now, of course, that might mean that you just need to make sure with the people you're renting from that the key collection is doable on the day and time of day when you're arriving. So think about that. Make sure you've got phone numbers for those agencies or the landlords ahead of your arrival and work out when you're going to arrive and how to get those keys. If you need short-term accommodation before getting into your accommodation or finalizing accommodation in Plymouth, then it's advised that you make a bed and breakfast, otherwise called a B&B, or a hotel arrangement booking just for those first few days after arrival, so that when you get to Plymouth, you don't have to think, where am I going to stay tonight? Of course. Okay, some timetables. It's quite important to know these timescales, especially over the Christmas New Year break, which is looming up on us quite soon. So the reservation to key collection time can take approximately 10 to 14 working days, depending on how quickly the funds transfer, etc. So be sure to check your messages from the landlord or the agency and provide any information that they need you to provide ASAP as soon as possible, because if there's anything waiting in your inbox, that's the delay that you could avoid. If it's in their inbox again sooner, that will help you. Bear in mind that it might be competitive if there's other students looking at the same accommodation, so the landlords or the agents might give you a deadline by which to respond. So bear that in mind and work ahead of that if you can. Of course, the Christmas New Year break, there is a break where many organizations, including universities, agencies, most businesses, will have Christmas New Year break. So it could be that December 20th is the last day and they're not opening again until early January, such as January 2nd or 3rd. So bear in mind, if you can get as much done before that break, that will help you. And then you can chase them up again in early January. Note the UK office hours are typically 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. After that, agents might not reply until the next day. If you've got any problems, I've already given this email address out before, uniaccommodation@plymouth.ac.uk. They can give some either more advice or signpost you as well. They've put their availability during the Christmas New Year period, and you can see the green days. Well, you could if you're not colorblind like me, but apparently there's green days on that calendar, the ones that are not black. That's when they're available. Right, if you haven't done this bit, this is a fun bit, our virtual tour. The bit on the left here shows you some of the images maybe connected to a virtual tour. You can kind of zoom in from space and you can see the campus. You can go inside different rooms and get 360 views of those rooms in most, if not all of our buildings. And there's 10, 12 or more secret coastal stepping stone spots for you to explore the wonderful coastline of Britain's ocean city and all around. It is a real adventure when you come to study abroad, and Devon has amazing scenery and Cornwall too, not forgetting our next door neighbours. There's lots of great things for you to explore. Why not have a play with a virtual tour? You'll get familiar with the city a bit more and the campus, and you get more ready to go and see these things in 3D when you get here. So there is the QR for that. Right, packing, haha, the thing I'm always very, very bad at. Why am I advising on something I can't do? Okay, well, do as I say, not as I do with packing, okay? We've got to think about checked luggage and hand luggage. Hand luggage is also called carry-on, the thing you'd carry into the cabin and put in your seat, under your seat, right? But checked luggage is the thing that goes in the hold. So starting with checked luggage, please check your allowance on your ticket with the airline. Some airlines these days offer super discounted flights, relatively, but they have zero checked baggage. And if you've not noticed that, you might book a ticket or a flight, as I once did, that didn't have any checked baggage. That's a problem. So make sure you're picking one that has an allowance of hold baggage because you'll probably need it. And then whether it's one or two pieces, check that. Sometimes it's just a maximum amount of kgs, check that. And then make sure you're inside that. If you start to go over, airlines these days, they like to charge you money. Um, Obvious here, but it's quite hard for me to do. Pack light. That's what I'm bad at. But please don't do like I do and pack lots of things. Why do I need three irons in my suitcase? That's crazy. Don't even bring one. You will buy more stuff here. You can get stuff here and share it with other people to save on costs. There's ways of reducing cost on what you buy, and you won't always know what you need until you're here. So focus on clothing and essentials rather than lots of things that just add weight or bulk that you might not need. Do remember that you will be arriving in the British winter, but rather than have 27 really warm coats and 47 really warm jumpers, that's too big and too heavy, reduce the weight and bulk. We talk about the onion principle. Why? Well, because onions have layers, right? And so our clothing has layers. Oftentimes you'll have a t-shirt, a jumper, and a jacket or a coat, something like that. And then when you get inside the buildings, it's quite warm with the heating, off come those layers. So you don't need too much heavy stuff, okay? Now, in your hand luggage or your carry-on luggage, each airline again will have its regulations. So again, pay attention to your ticket and note what your hand luggage needs to look like and weigh. Obviously, important documents must be in your hand luggage, your passport, your insurance documents, money, printouts of phone numbers. Don't just rely on your phone because what if the battery goes flat or you lose your charger or you lose your phone or it breaks? I know, horror stories, right? Well, it could happen. So print out key phone numbers and addresses, most particularly your accommodation address. Have your offer letter from the universities printed out, CAS statement printed out, e-visa printed, original transcript certificates, ATAS, any medical documents that you need, proof of financial support. Because if you are asked at immigration, as Nina said earlier, for anything like that, you can't say, oh, it's in my checked luggage, because you won't have it then. You need it in your hand luggage. Related to what you might need and medications I mentioned earlier, if you will need medication when you're in the UK, it will need to happen once you've registered with a general practitioner or GP, as we call them. You can't just automatically get these medications, but it can take time, even a few weeks, to get that registration all done and then get the doctor to prescribe the medicine. So you must, if you've got long-term medicine that you need to take, you should bring 60 to 90 days or 2 or 3 months worth of that prescription medication with you. Well, if it says 2 to 3 months, my advice is bring 3 months just to be safe. Now, it's possible you won't access the same medication in the UK as you might in your home country because they may not be licensed in the UK or they have different names. So again, check with your doctor prior to departure about that. We do have our own University Medical Centre on campus, and that's where you'll register online, but do it when you arrive in Plymouth. Don't wait until you might need a doctor and then say, oh, now I feel ill, now I want to start the registration process. That's not going to help you. So do it when you first arrive so that you're ready, should you need a doctor, to access one more easily in that event. Okay. Note that pharmacies, otherwise called chemists in British English, often can give advice and certain medications. So you can always look at contacting a pharmacist or a chemist if you want to do that whilst waiting to see a GP. But like I say, register with the doctor as soon as you arrive. It just makes sense. Good practice, huh? Right, arrivals experience now. Well, you've arrived in either London, Gatwick airports. If it's London, it'd be Heathrow or Gatwick. Heathrow is by far the most common because most flights go there. That means there's more choice for your flights. That usually means they are the cheaper flights, but also Heathrow is the best connected of all the London airports to Plymouth. That's because Heathrow has the Heathrow Express that goes to London Paddington, and then from the same station, Paddington goes directly to Plymouth. Whereas other airports, you might have to go to a different London station and then transfer around underground to get to Paddington or in a taxi with all your suitcases. It's just quite a lot of hassle. So it's best for most students to fly straight to Heathrow. And if you do, as I've said, Heathrow Express to London Paddington, yes, like the bear. I just saw Paddington 3 last week. It's lovely. And then you're in Paddington Station, you said hello to the bear, and then you take the train to Plymouth. Or you can take a coach directly from Heathrow, the Central 2-3 bus station, directly to Plymouth. It's usually either National Express or sometimes a Megabus. The bus is cheaper, but sometimes would take longer, depending also whether you have to wait a while for that bus to arrive. There's not so many buses compared to trains, but I often take the coach myself because it's just means I don't have to go into London and out again. I just go straight from Heathrow. If your flight lands at Terminal 4 or 5, then you need to get the free underground train connecting on Heathrow Express, the free one that connects you from Terminal 4 or Terminal 5 to that central 2-3 terminal where you then walk to the bus station. If you're already landing in Terminals 2 or 3, you just do that walk. You don't need a train. If you land in Terminal 1, something's gone wrong because that's not a terminal anymore. So it's only going to be those 4 terminals that are possible. If you fly from into Gatwick, you can take the Gatwick South Terminal to Reading and then Reading to Plymouth on the train. That's the best way. I wouldn't go into London around Victoria and taxi and underground. It's just confusing. So either take the train to Reading and then Reading to Plymouth, or take the coach, as I've said before. You might find some European connections that go into Bristol or maybe even occasionally to Exeter. They're closer to Plymouth, and you can see the details on how to get to them on the screen here. But usually I find either the connection time in Europe is so long for such flights, or the cost is so much higher that it tends not to be worth it. So Heathrow is surely your best bet. And yes, there's another QR code hiding in the corner there. Take that because that gives you more advice about how to get to Plymouth. Okay, you've got here now. Phew, how's your jet lag? Let's find out. Right, what's going to happen? The first thing you should do when you arrive is please, 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 please let your family know that you're here, because every year we get an email or a phone call from an understandably worried family member saying, "Where are you?" And we might not know where you are either. So that can be a little bit frantic for a few hours. So do let them know that you're safe and here so they can rest. Of course, check into your accommodation. Of course, complete your right to study check, as Nina has said earlier, because that's important to do that early. Then you'll do that online enrollment, as Nina also said, because you can only do that when you're in the UK. And only then, once all that is done, can you access your induction schedule and your important class timetable. We have to have it in that order, so make sure you do those first 4 things so that number 5 comes at the right time and you're not stressed. I've told you already, register with the doctors, then open a UK bank account. The Student Hub will help you with all of that information. And of course, attending the Welcome Day in the Royal Marquee on the 17th of January covers these things and more. So we'll see you then. Okay, here's another QR code. We do like them, don't we? So International Student Welcome Day on the 17th, as we have said, is from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. and it has tons of essential information and is in the big white tent, otherwise known as the Royal Marquee. So if you hear Royal Marquee and you've never heard of Marquee, Vignette Marquee, are we in France? No, we are in UK. The Marquee is the big white tent. It's right in the middle of campus. You cannot miss it. That's where you'll go. And lunch is included. For dramatic effect, I will repeat that lunch is included. Your welcome day and induction programs all be available by the end of December. So it's great, but the welcome day is the main thing to get here for. If you did arrive later, or if you have any other questions, the Student Hub is in the campus library, and that's all you have to do. Go there. There's a ton of super helpful, friendly people to help you. Important message, it is compulsory to attend your course induction as detailed in your offer. You need to do that, otherwise you can't enroll on the program. And look at that, another QR code, my gosh. A few extra things now. It's really helpful to download the University of Plymouth app. That will be something to get, and it will help you once you're here. There's lots of different buddy schemes. There's lots of information about the Students' Union. It's a fabulous organization, the Students' Union. I mentioned it earlier, UPSU, University of Plymouth Student Union. It's a really cool thing to learn about what the students do, the support and advice, and all the social and fun activities too. Okay, so the Student Hub is like your first point of contact where the support services of the student support services are. So go to the Student Hub in the library. Genuinely, it's really helpful for non-academic inquiries. Of course, you would go to your tutor or your academic department if it's an academic question, probably. But everything else, really, just go and get that help from the university. No issue is too big, as it says. No question is too small. If you're experiencing any financial hardship due to extra cost or unexpected health issues or anything like that, do note that the university will do what it can to support. So again, reaching out to the student services early if you have an issue will help us to help you better. I'm not going to read out what our students think because you can read it for yourselves, but it's really, really cool that we have lots of students who come from a variety of countries all around the world and really make their home in Plymouth and not just enjoy their studies, but enjoy being part of the student body here and interacting with other international students, interacting with British students, and indeed staff, and making friends and connections that will last a lifetime. So you can read these examples here or go to our website, go to our program pages, go to country-specific pages. There's lots of great student success stories. So we're looking forward to you being part of that success story as well, and to let us know what your great talking points are for Plymouth once you are here. Couple of key contacts here. This email address, international at Plymouth, that was given at the beginning of the slideshow. So here it is again now. Obviously, there's the website. You can see international on Facebook. And basically, if you have any other questions that we haven't covered in the Q&A, then reach out to us by email and we'll make sure we deal with those for you.